500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom,
the ghost who walks,
the Phantom,
enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom, he finds you.
G'day everybody, and for those who have come in late, you're listening to Expand the Phantom podcast. My name is Jermaine, and today I am joined by Stephen. How are you, Stephen?
I'm very well, Jermaine, and yourself?
I'm good. It's been busy, which, you know, for obvious reasons at work and stuff, but
So you actually get going to work? You can't work from home?
I could, but I prefer to work from work, just because there's a lot of stuff that I actually have to do, and stuff like that. So, but no, I'm good. I've got a job, and so, you know, you can't complain about that.
Not complaining at all.
Yeah, that's it. So now we've got a very special guest today. Now, before we talk about the special guest, you're probably wondering where Dan is. Now, the reason why Dan is not joining us is because we all know he is a forkist. And we're talking to a very special Team Fantomen author. And we just thought it would just be easier to kick the forkist off the podcast. No, just jokes.
To be fair, I mean, the poor fellow, he's in leadership at his school. He's had a week from hell. And the poor fellow, he's getting some rest. Hopefully he's having a well-earned rest now.
Yeah.
He's been flat out all week, and well, like everyone has. But when you're up in it's his first year in leadership, and he's got this to deal with. So Dan, we're thinking of you, mate.
A huge shout out to Dan. I did tell him that we will tell him the truth while he wasn't joining us after a lie. So, okay. So let's get down to business. Now, if you read Phantom comics in the 90s.
Yes, I did.
Yep. You would have read classics like Higgins Revenge, The Setup, Hunted, The King of Chicago, The Psychopath, The Murder Rap, all these type of amazing stories, and they've all got one thing in common, and that is that
published by Frew.
they were all written by Lennart Moberg, and we are lucky enough to have him on the line all the way from Sweden. However, before we talk to Lennart, we just wanted to make mention of our favourite stories. Now, Stephen, what was your favourite story?
My favourite, well, when I was given the list, I picked out King of Chicago straight away. The image of the Phantom, or the Phantom's grandfather, flipping that car is one that stuck with me, you know, for the last however many years it's been, nearly 30 years. I think, 94 was it? So maybe just over 25 years. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes, I've just finished rereading it 10 minutes before we went to air again. And it's I'm ashamed I didn't read it a couple more times in between those last 20 years. It's a great story.
Yeah, definitely. So for those who don't know, that's the image there on the back of 1092. That's you're right. That's an image that stuck with me as well. So we've also asked some of the other guys. We asked Dan. His favourite story was The Murder Rap. And then we also asked Mikkel, which was Hoogaan's Revenge, which I think a lot of people is Hoogaan's Revenge. Me personally, it is The Setup. Now, what makes this story so special for me is that this was the comic. This actually here was the comic that got me hooked on the Phantom. So I was reading this on the way. I brought this on the way to a mission trip. I would have been about 12 years old, and I read this and read this and read this on the plane and, you know, in traffic and everything like that. And this is what got me hooked on the Phantom. I always read the Phantom before, but this was what got me hooked. So, welcome, Lennart. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
That's good. So, as I've told my wife, I said to her that I'm talking to the person that got me hooked on the Phantom. So welcome. This is a great honor for myself. Like I said, your story, The Setup, was the story that got me hooked on the Phantom. So, first of all, we were just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about yourself. First of all, have we pronounced your name correctly? Your age, where you were raised, and kind of from there, and then we can kind of go from there, if that's okay.
Well, first of all, I must say that I'm deeply honored that you found my setup. Or what was it? It was the first you were hooked on, you said?
Yeah, the story
Yeah.
that got me hooked on the family.
I'm deeply honored that you found it so interesting that you got caught in the phantom world. Me, myself, I'm pronounced Lennart. In English it would be Lennart, but in Sweden it would be Lennart, or in Italy, Leonardo. That kind of thing. But I found, once upon a time, I thought I would create an image called Lennart. But it was already taken, so I couldn't use that. I'm an age of 64. On my beginning 65. I'm retired now. Have left the phantom world, but I follow it occasionally, from time to time. And I'm pretty much living a retirement life now.
Yep. So, how did you get into the comics industry? Was it something that you had studied, or was there something that led you into the comics industry? How did it all begin?
Well, it began when I was 17. I will always fancy the science fiction world, so I created a science fiction story, which I walked up to the local newspaper in hope that they would buy it and publish it, which they didn't, of course. And but they wrote an article about me, which led to I got my first job in a organization called UFO Sweden. UFO, unidentified flying object, science fiction, space, and everything that I like. So I had my first job there, and in that sense, I created a story that I had published in their magazine. And eventually, I started locating myself to see where I can find other magazines where I can get my stuff published, which led me to Bonnier, a comic company in Stockholm, in Sweden. But they didn't want to have anything to do with me at all. But I didn't give up until they created a magazine called Svenska Serier, if I translate it right off, it would be Swedish Comics.
Yep.
There I got my first comic published in general. It was a science fiction story, of course, and I managed to get 5 episodes published there. And from there it started. Then I had to learn the head of the comic, edition staff, Ulf Granberg. He was a very competent manager for all this. So from there it went. And finally, after many years, I got into Team Fantomen, the Phantom, where I've been steady ever since.
Yeah. So, did you read the Phantom growing up and before your job with Team Fantomen?
Yeah, I digested every comic book, not least the Phantom, when I was a kid. I was sitting in my kitchen doing a whole comic book myself with a friend of mine. He was more enthusiastic than giving me any help with it. But we did club pages and advertising pages and everything, and an adventure. So I would give my life to get hold of that magazine, but of course it's disappeared now.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I was 7 years old when I did that.
Oh, wow. Stephen, did you ever create your own story or try to create your own story?
Me?
Yeah.
No, you think about it every now and then, and you might jot a few ideas down, but nah, not me.
I know I
It's not
tried.
too late. It's not too late.
I tried to create one when I was about 13 or 14. I remember.
I give a bit of advice. Load up with a pint or two, then get started.
That'll work well.
Yeah, it's work.
When you first started, that in the I'll butcher the pronunciation of it. That first series that you worked on, were you writing it or were you drawing it as well?
Well, I always had the idea, if I write something, I would like to draw something too. This script story came to be when I entered the Phantom team world, because it was a team actually.
Yeah.
And if I started to push that I would draw something, I took a job from another person that was already in the team. So I accepted the fact that I would write. But I have had some pencil work, at least, in some of the stories I have made. When it comes to the Phantom, that is.
Yeah. So is that because I guess because it's like you've created it, so you want like the ownership, and so you can kind of direct. Is that why you've done the penciling as well, or what was?
Well, it's it's up to the mentor Ulf Granberg to decide. He was the head of the publishing company then, so he decided who would do what.
Yeah.
So it was up to him actually. But sometimes we had the discussion. I pushed, and finally I got the job. So it was.
Did you do any formal training as a writer or as an artist? Because rereading your stuff today, I was just wondering if you had any formal training as an artist.
No.
Yeah.
No, no training at all. I'm a self-taught man.
Oh, crikey!
Yeah, like everything else I have done so far. I see it this way, because if you go, well, it's of course very useful if you go to a school and teach you something, but they have a tendency to narrow you to this, what do you call, to be a specific way when you draw.
Yeah.
If you do it yourself, you can expand your own talent and make things your own way.
Yeah. One of the.
Did you get what I
mean? Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And I guess when you get to draw it as well, you have that little bit more ownership and a little bit more control on how the panels are shown and directed as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you shall remember, if you draw a script, make a script, you have a visual in your an image in your head what it would look like, what it's supposed to look like. But when you send it away to another artist, it doesn't happen that way, because he has another vision.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I don't mean anything bad about this, but sometimes you get a little bit disappointed when it comes back and it doesn't look like you have visualized it yourself.
Yeah. Now
that's the name of the game, actually.
Yeah, I noticed that of a lot of the stories that you did the penciling for, Christoph Thunberg was the inker.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you have a good working relationship with him?
Yeah, of course. I knew everybody up in the comic company.
Yeah.
So he was one of the studio artists, you can call it.
Okay.
Who works from time to time. But he had to sketch, ink some of the works that come up there.
Yeah.
And this one was mine then. So we had a very good relationship.
When I see the stories that the two of you have drawn, and I'm talking about stories like Death from Radiation, Jungle Bait, the Psychopath. I think there was, they're very, very dark, and they're well, not dark, but they're very heavy, and they're a lot of them are kind of like from almost a different, like instead of just focused on the Phantom's it's almost like a personal point of view from someone else, and then the Phantom comes into the story. Was that by design?
Yeah, that's true. That was by design, because I figured that every angle that had happened to the Phantom and with the Phantom has already been made.
Yeah.
So I decided to focus on other people's experience of the Phantom, their fear or their anguish or something like that. And you know, as a reader, what the Phantom is capable of doing. The thing is, you should realize or read about what other people's experience of this is. So I focused on that, actually.
Yeah, like the Psychopath. That was the one where for those who haven't or don't remember the story, it was last printed in. I'll just bring up the numbers. Just bear with me. The Fru was 1194, which was in 98, and in Sweden it was Fantomen 1998. That was a story where a guy ends up in a psychiatric institution, and then he's retelling the story of what happened for him to be in there, and it was such an intriguing story. That's this has to be one of. Do you remember that story?
Yes, I remember a little vaguely, but I have the magazine here, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I had to read it through this morning to recapitulate what it was all about, because my memory is not that quite good these days. But I remember it because a villain or a crook or something like that was caught sometime from a very mysterious, bizarre figure as he saw it. That struck his mind, actually. And no one really believed him when he told the story, so they locked him up in a psychiatric institution, as you said. And when the psychiatrist, the psychiatrist, came along, he had this story told for him. So, and what shall I believe? Is he mad or something like that?
Yeah, and throughout the story, you don't actually really see the Phantom in full. He's always in shadows or and stuff like that. I just thought it was really well done. How I'm not creative. What is it, Stephen? Is it the third person or the fourth wall or something like that?
Oh no, I have to read the story again to say what you mean.
Well, you should remember that the Phantom is being of the dark. He works in the shades. No one really sees him. You feel him.
Yeah.
You sense him, and even though his doings are pretty accurate, sometimes they leave the villains at the police enforcement. They have the mark on the chin and everything. But he is a creature of the dark, actually. So, and I would like it to stay that way. So when he told the story, for instance, if I told you there was a beast over here, we have never seen him actually, but he's very monstrous and he's angry. And would you believe in him? That's the kind of thing you have to realize.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you see yourself as a writer who is an artist, or do you see yourself as equally a writer and an artist?
Well, I have other things to do besides the comic stuff. So I have been in the commercial business, making ads, illustration to newspapers and everything, and political satire images and so forth. But I consider myself an artist in general. But when it comes to comics, I see myself writer and artist together. Those two are combined. You cannot separate them apart.
Yeah.
Just use creator as an overall term. might get them both there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in preparation for tonight, I've read through a couple of your stories, so I'm glad that you had to reread them as well to remind yourself as well. Does make me feel
Yeah.
so
So
bad.
my memory is not. You're not alone, you know.
But so the ones that I read before starting here, I read Assignment in Riga, which you wrote, but Felmang did the art on, and then the sequel, Death from Radiation, where, as was mentioned before, you did most of the artwork, but Thunberg did the ink. I don't want to say dark, because it's not saying, I don't mean that the art was dark, but the story was quite dark. Like when in Assignment in Riga and then the orphanage, and then the young fella just gets murdered by the bad guys in that story quite brutally. And as I'm reading the story, and this, it's kicking along, it's going all right. Then all of a sudden, it was quite a shock for that to happen. And then later on, I reread The King of Chicago. You don't, and I didn't remember it from back then, but reading it now, you have these quite shock points and the quite gritty violence. You don't shy away from it.
What was the question again?
I was trying to get a question, but I realised I was just getting to a big comment and observation. So yeah, I took myself out of a question. But is that an interest? Something that you? Usually I'm more clear on my questions. My apologies.
So
Come back and ask another one, Jim, and I'll word this question better.
All right. So I guess a lot of your stories tend to be like a thriller, like from a movie type of theme. They're like a thriller action, but you're not afraid, as what Stephen was saying, to deal with adult themes. Like in Assignment in Riga, there was the child that got killed. There was radiation. The King of Chicago with Al Capone and stuff like that. Is that how you see the Phantom dealing with those type of issues and a gritty type of hero, someone who can deal with really, really bad people and is not afraid to mix it up with them?
Well, at first I was very much into writing stories around things that had happened today or nearby.
Yeah.
Things that I picked up from the society that happens, a killing there, a revolution there, or something near in time, so to speak. So I focused on that in the first book because Klaus Hermetti, he was very fond of writing stories from the past, from Phantom's ancestors and such. And me, myself, I was in present time writer. But when it comes to King of Chicago, I found it very thrilling to pick up an event that had happened so many years ago, back in the 1920s, and when Phantom's ancestor, his forefather, got to deal with Al Capone. And I find it very exciting to do research and how the heck will I place a Phantom in such a bizarre environment there with machine guns and gangsters and the prohibition time and everything like that. So, but I managed to do that, and it was very, 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 this is my favorite of all time.
The King of Chicago?
The King of Chicago, right.
Yeah.
I think that was one of our questions, if you had a favourite story. So
okay, well, I answered that already.
Yeah.
No, but it was very, very, very hard work to find where do I place the Phantom in that story, because you can't change the story; it has already happened.
Yeah.
But at some point, the St. Valentine massacre.
Yeah.
Is the most symbolic event that happened during that time with Al Capone and Bugs Moran and whatever they call. There, you can place Phantom in the middle of this. Before that, he was Mr. Walker. And he joined Al Capone's army of gangsters before that happened. So
yeah, I did like how you managed to, and on a whole, I think Team Fantomen do it quite well, where you can interject the Phantom without him, I guess, playing or modifying history too much, but him being integral to what happened back in the past, like you did with the King of Chicago. Now, I will admit it. I read this for the first time and watched what's that movie? Is it The Untouchables?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I read and watched. So I read your story and watched that movie around the same time. So it was a real thrilling point in my life, you know, kind of learning about it from the Phantom comic and then also from the movie and how they were able to kind of interact with each other and stuff.
Well, I remember when the story was published in Frew that they had a whole write-up and a bit of a explanation about the whole gangster wars. So that was my education about what was going on. So
Yeah.
bad for a young teenager to find out what's happening.
Yeah, and I guess that is one of the good things about history is that.
Sorry, you're disappearing your voice.
Yeah, you broke up a lot there, Jam.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me better now?
No, it's okay.
I was just saying that's one of the things that is good about the Phantom is that you do learn a lot about the history of events through the Phantom comics.
Actually, I have been to this prison island, Alcatraz, in San Francisco, and visited that prison. And during that period that when Clint Eastwood was making that film called Escape from Alcatraz,
Yep.
I think it was. So we saw him shooting the movie far away in the distance. So we went there to see the cell that Al Capone were sitting in when he got caught eventually. It was real thrilling.
Oh wow! So another story that kind of I see a bit of an influence from a movie would be this one, Hunted, which for those who don't know, it's through 1084, which features the Phantom and Luaga having a bit of a fight towards the end. Now, yeah, and then there's the Swedish version as well.
Yeah.
Now, it kind of reminds me of the Harrison Ford movie. Was there an influence with that movie and this story, or?
Yeah, you get influenced every time. I watch a lot of movies and I read a lot and stuff like that. And even though this wasn't actually based on that, but I had some thoughts and ideas that came from the movie. So I built my story from that, you know. So,
Yeah.
so it's so every time I create a story, I always pick up influences from everywhere.
Hmm.
And if it suits, then it becomes a story.
Yeah. That was I really enjoyed that story as well. I think what made it was the depth of the character, the depth of the friendship between the Phantom and Luaga, like towards the end, and it's also on the front cover of both issues, where you've got the Phantom. He's got his arm up and he's trembling and he has to hold back for punching one of his best friends. Was that was that by intention? That did like that moment start and then you created the story to go around that? How did you get to that moment?
Well, you're right from one point of view. It's all started from a friendship that ended. I had a friend that I got a row with, and we're not friends anymore. And that was part of that I built into the story. So it started from there. What happens if the Phantom gets unfriended with President Luaga? What would happen if he, in general, being picked away from the presidentship, and he's eager to prove his innocence from all what in what he was accused for, what would happen then? Would Phantom stand by his side, or would he turn away from him? And there was, and from there I built a story from that where it ended with him nearly knocking him down, but he stopped and halted himself, but just as this one favor.
Yeah.
He wouldn't stand by his former friend, if he turned on the path he has chosen.
I remember I came in a couple of issues after this, and so that was when I was a new fan, I guess you could say, and that story, just like the tension between the Phantom and Luaga, it was really thick, and seeing the friendship fracture because of the circumstances leading up to it, it was really intense.
Yeah, it was intended to be. It was supposed to be, I should say, because when you like somebody that much, as the Phantom and Luaga, they had a history together with all the Babalu, what his name was, when Luaga turned from his doctorship to a presidential man, and all that he stood for. That what happens if it breaks up, and the Phantom, he is so very, very, what do you call it, moralist. He has a moral that stands above everybody else, and he can't stand to see Luaga turn away from him that way.
Yeah,
that's one of my intentions.
I think you nailed it. I know that you've talked a little bit about Team Fantomen. Whose idea was it for Luaga to lose his presidency and the friendship to be fractured? Was it like a group effort, or was it?
No, we had, when I entered Team Phantom, it was me, Klaus Zermetti, Hans Lyndell, Ulf Granberg, a man called Björn Instedt, and some other from the editorial staff. We gather once a year, from time to time, on several occasions, mostly in old medieval castles and mansions, just to get the right atmosphere, as Ulf Granberg would say. Which he did, actually, yeah. So it's hard to say who came up with what idea, but I think it was my idea, but I'm not really sure, actually.
You're here, so you can claim it.
Huh? Again, please?
You're here, the others aren't, so you can claim it. We'll say it's
that's right. No, but you shall remember we gather once a year to create the new storyline for the Phantom's universe. And for a day and a half, we had an whole year covered. So we could go back and plan for the year to come. And we had a good laugh every time we met. And but I remember specifically one time we gathered as usual. We had a slight breakfast, and when we went to the conference room, and we picked up pencils and notepads and everything, and we started to think and create. And we were humming and thinking and humming. Nothing came out. Nothing at all. We had a break for coffee and went back. We started thinking and humming and thinking. Nothing came out. And so it kept on. So we broke up for dinner, and we thought maybe a pint or two would solve the situation. For me, it was actually 3 pints, but it wouldn't work. We sat there, nothing came up, nothing at all. So we had an early evening and went to bed. Next morning, we had breakfast and went back to the conference room, and something happened. It was like somebody pulled out the plug and the waterfall came out. For 4 hours, we created the whole year, which we have supposed to do the day before. So we said goodbye to each other, pretty happy after all. So that's the way it could turn out sometimes.
So the argument you had, or you break up, that happened over that night, and then all of a sudden you had this wonderful streak of creativity come the next day to realise.
Yeah, the next day,
break
for
the
4
fan
hours.
with Luaga.
We sat there in 9 hours, 10 hours without doing nothing. We couldn't make anything come up with plots and ideas and everything. But the next day, for 4 hours, everything was solved.
Wow,
It's incredible.
cool. So was that was the time that you came up with Luaga losing his presidency?
I guess so. I just don't really remember.
A few points can do that to you, Jan.
Wow. So, because Luaga losing his presidency, we're still feeling the effects of that 20 odd years later, with Luaga just being sworn in again recently after Lubanga and after some other presidencies and stuff. And if anyone's wanting to know the history of the presidencies of Bengal, go to our website, because there's a good article that goes in detail on that as well. So it's amazing to hear the genesis of that story. I really enjoyed that. So thanks for telling us about that.
Okay, you're welcome.
So what was the response like from what you remember about this saga of Luaga losing his presidency? Was it overall positive? Were the old timers, or the Forkers as we call them, did they get upset, or?
Do you mean people I know have read the stories?
Like the
fans, really? The fan reaction. Yeah.
Well, I didn't have much. You remember that Ulf Granberg is the head of the comic company, and maybe reactions on that maybe spilled over to him, I guess.
Okay.
I didn't learn anything about that anyway. I had some calls from United States in the middle of the night because the time difference, I didn't quite really understand what they say. I was just more or less asleep when I answered the phone. But they had some problems with that, so I remember.
Oh, wow.
Oh, as in King Features?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Because I remember as a kid, you'd be reading the Team Fantomen stories where the breakdown in the relationships happen, and then you read the newspaper strips and everything's hunky-dory. And I must admit, as a kid, you think, what the heck's going on? As an adult, looking back, well, they're two separate storylines, and you just deal with it. But I remember as a kid being a little bit confused, but still enjoying it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Did you enjoy the series, Stephen?
Yes, from what I remember. I want to go back and read after just having a bit of a read before here, and now talking to Lennart now, I really want to go back and read the whole story arc again. And I remember it was it Blood Brothers as well.
Yeah, when
they made up again? Is that right? Or they
yeah.
Well,
you
should remember
it.
Those stories. I think this is the story that comes after Luaga's. Which one was it?
It was the story that you wrote, Leonard.
Yeah, after Hunted, the story Hunted.
Hang on.
His Luaga's crooked brother Luca was a part of something that made Phantom come into action.
That one was. Which one was that one? I know that one. Was it the Gun Runners or Jungle Bait? I think it was Jungle Bait, which had Locker.
Yeah, that's right. The Jungle Bait, right. So that story comes after Luaga story, Hunted. And there's a third episode that's connected with these other two, which is Blood Brother. Yeah.
So for those who want to know, Blood Brother basically was printed in Australia through 1152 and Sweden 1996. And that is by Felmang. And basically what happened was Luaga got shot, I believe, and then the Phantom rescued him and gave him a blood transfusion to save his life. And
I think the other way around, actually.
Oh, was it? Yes, you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they became blood brothers because they shared the same blood.
And the things were slowly turning back to normal between them, I guess, if I remember correct.
Yeah. It was a beautiful story seeing the friendship become good again, I guess you could say, after, you know, it was only a couple of years, but it felt like an eternity with
Well,
stories.
yeah.
Did you have a favorite artist that you liked to see that would draw your stories?
Yes, I have actually. I was thinking.
Apart from yourself, of course.
I was just thinking apart from
Of
himself.
course. What was his name? I know for sure that Hans Lyndell is one of my favorite artists. He's very skillful and talented, and he has the remarkable talent of get action in each and every frame he makes.
Yeah.
We did a great job on Chicago.
Yeah. And that was one the reader's all-time favorite here in Sweden as well.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites as well.
I'm trying to find out which, but then you have Fulmang, which one of my favorite too.
He's another favorite, I think, of everyone's.
Yeah, if I may say so, he's a little bit feministic in his drawing.
You reckon?
I reckon.
Yeah, we say that a lot.
He's not he's very talented, and he has an extraordinary talent for anatomy, but it's a little bit feministic, I would say. Don't mean anything by that.
Yeah.
Well, I did notice that in that story, Simon and Riga, he does the art, and it's very Diana heavy.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I just found out that the third favorite I have is Mitton.
Yeah. I was gonna.
He's a great artist. He's a great artist, actually.
He did Higgins Revenge.
Yeah, that's right.
Where did that? That's probably one of. If people were to say, like, you know, do their top 10 Phantom stories or whatever, I reckon that would be in a lot of people's stories, in people's top favourites. Where did that story come from? Because that's an amazing story.
Hoogaan's Revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I figured out isn't there anything in the Phantom's past that we could use to build a story? Then I found this story about Hoogaan when I don't remember actually why he was sent to prison, but I figured out if he has been in prison for so many years and he has studied and learned something and got away from the primitive status he had before as a medicine man, what happens if such a person becomes free and is full of hate and revenge? So I build up a story by that. When he comes out, he uses his newly acquired knowledge of what society functions and start plotting to find and revenge on the Phantom.
I remember it was like an action film. This is the story here. It's been published. One of the few stories that's been published a few times by Frew. But it was you know, for a young kid of, you know, early teenagers, it was like an action movie. You know, like the good old 80s and 90s action movies. It's just, you know, you got the two bad guys just shaping off you got the bad guy and the Phantom shaping off in the jungle and chasing each other with the traps and everything. It was. I can still read the story now and have just as much excitement reading the story as I did as a 12 or 15-year-old.
But the thing is, when I created this story, I wanted not Hoogaan himself would chase the Phantom. He would hire someone, a hitman, to chase the Phantom, and like the Green Beret kind of soldier who is. I wanted the Phantom to meet an equal who
Yeah.
knows the jungle and knows this tragedy of war or such a thing. So that was the base of my story then.
Mm. You did very
And
well.
I think
You did very well on
and
that story.
he had a real fight with him, actually.
Yeah. And like towards the end, it's he just the Phantom's just like he says, "Not now. I must rest." It was just
Yeah. Even him got tired.
yeah.
Well, when you mentioned before, Jerm, that was it the setup was the one that hooked you? Was
Yeah.
that the one? Well, when I first started, well, just before I started Phantom collecting, a family friend was big into the Phantom, and he gave me, I don't know, half a dozen or so comics. I think I've said this story before. Higgins Revenge was in that half a dozen or so comics.
There you go, Leonard. You've the two of the people that you're talking to. You're the cause for our addiction.
Well, it helps that he's working on a very good character.
Yeah, exactly. So I was
Aren't we all a character?
sorry, what was that?
Aren't we all a character?
Yes.
Like we made a couple of mentions of some names that you've worked with. Now, Hans Lyndell, he's someone that we've all kind of admired, but as I don't really know much about him. Did you work much with him, like with Team Fantomen? What was he like?
Hans Lyndell?
Yeah, Hans Lyndell.
Yeah. Well, he's a loner, I would say. He's a very kind person. I must start with that. But he's a loner, and he lives for his art history.
Yeah.
And from the beginning, he was more an artist. But from a couple of years ago, after we met, he started to write as well. So he had some stories. To mention, he got a breakthrough at the same time as I did in the Swedish comics, as I mentioned earlier. So we have a mutual history, in fact. So we have been connecting together from time to time. But it was a very long time now since I spoke with him. He had taken care of his aunt, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And he doesn't have much time. I think he works with a book company in Norway, making covers or something like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he's he'll be one person that I would love to get on the podcast one day to talk about.
Well, you can make a try, but don't think you'll succeed because, as I said here, he's a loner, and but he's a very skillful artist. Actually, the best I ever
There's
seen.
no doubting that.
Another person that you've obviously worked a lot with, Klaus Ramefi.
Klaus Ramefi, yes, that's right.
Yeah. What is he like?
Well, he's how shall I put it? He's he's a generous person, just as Hans, but he's more a social person. But his interest lies in historic events.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, because he writes all the historical events that, more or less, I should say, that is in the Phantom adventures. And he has written several books according to the Swedish history. And, well, he's a very skillful person when it comes to writing. He cannot draw, but he is the best there is there to write, actually.
Awesome.
So if you want to have him on the hook, go for it. I think he's more easy to catch and get on this interview than Hans, I would say. Not. I don't mean any harm to Hans, but just the way it is.
Yeah.
Just the way it is.
We'll take up the challenge and try again with both of them and see if we can get there. Now, when you wrote stories, did you have any communication with the artist, or was it like literally you write the story, hand it off, and then you saw it in the comic again, or like what was the working relationship in Team Fantomen?
Well, except for Hans, I have no other contact with the artist.
Okay.
I never knew them. I sent up my script to Ulf Granberg, and as a spider in the web, he distributed the script to different artists. So I never knew which artist that will deal with my script, actually.
Okay. So not even Thunberg or Thunborg? No, yeah, no, didn't have any working relationship with him, because I look at the stories that you've created, and there's a lot of stories that you've created with him. So
yeah, that's right. Him, I forgot him. Him, I met occasionally from time to time. I spoke with him, but we didn't have much contact. As I said before, he worked as a studio artist. He what do you call? He erased faults that he found in the drawings and put his pencil on it instead and such things. But he had his talent. He was very talented, so he draw some Fantomen stories too.
Cool.
I'll just moving on a little bit. We know you from your Phantom work. Have you done much other comic work apart from the Phantom?
Pardon me, I didn't catch it.
Have you done any other comic work apart from the Phantom?
Yeah, I have done my own comic, both writing and sketching and artist and inking. So before I entered the Phantom world, I have several adventures published here in Sweden in the name in the comic book they call Swedish comic.
Yeah. But since doing the Phantom, have you had more since, or was it only just before the Phantom you were doing your own stuff?
No, not when I entered the Phantom universe. I didn't have time much to do my own adventures. I also had a lot of commercial works, and I worked for the Swedish national television as well, with graphics and illustrations and such things. So I didn't have much time to do my own. It was enough, actually.
Yeah,
you
were busy enough.
Yeah, I was busy enough. Man. That's right.
You've led to believe that you've recently created a comic, a story.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. First of all, I must apologize. You should have the images I colored for you, but since I waited for the translation of that book, I should get back to you on that. But I'm waiting still for it. Now the situation with the coronavirus, the airplanes are still on the ground. So I must wait until they get back to normal again. So, but the book Hell Week, yeah, that's one of the main things that I have done. Before I retired, I would very much like to do something from my own hometown, Norrköping. You may not be aware of this, but Sweden was once a superpower in Europe. We had a lot of the territories in our hands, and we were in ever-ending war with Russia and with our nearest neighbor, Denmark, which is amazing today because Denmark are our closest friends now in Scandinavia. Finland, Norway, and Denmark, we are a unit now.
Yeah.
But back then, in 1700, we were in never-ending war, actually, with Russia as well. So we had large parts of Russia in our hands, and finally we got our ass kicked and have to find ourselves defeated. And in negotiations between Russia and Sweden, Russia put pressure on us in Sweden by ravaging the Baltic coastline and burned cities and ravaged and looted and everything like that. Not at least Norrköping, where I live. It was a dramatic story, which I decided to do something about. It has written books about it, of course, but that was a very long time ago, and I wanted to do a thing called Classics Illustrated. You know what I mean then?
Yeah. I've seen some of those comics,
Yeah.
So, do you have a copy of it that you can show us?
I don't know if there's some... maybe.
So if you're listening to this on the podcast, this might be a good chance to pause it and have a look at on YouTube. So this
This
is
is called Hell Week, the ravaging of the Russians back in 1719, and it's a full-length story without bubbles. It's just book text with illustrations like that. And I have intention to see if there was any interest in Australia about this, because you're so far away, and I don't think you know anything about what happened up here in the north.
No, you're right. We've got no idea.
No, you don't know that. I don't know much about Australia, so we're equal. No, so because, do you see?
oh, okay. So it's almost a bit like the Prince Valiant stories, where you have the big images and you have the text.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to do this in a very serious way and illustrate it in this kind of way.
Oh wow!
So it's a very, very dramatic story, and we will have to follow a young man named Eric, and through his eyes follow the adventure. Is historical correct? The only fictitious person is this Eric and his love, Lena, in the story.
So if you're listening to this and you want to purchase a copy, where can they go to? Do they just contact you? Do they contact you on your website or?
Well, I don't have an English translation yet, but you can read all about it in a website called Hell Week, Helvetesveckan. Do you see it? .nu. N-U.
Okay.
Type it in. Just.
Yep. So what we'll do is we'll put a link up so people can have a look at that as well.
There you have an English version as well.
Yeah, and I'm getting an English translation version of it as well to have a read as well. So no, appreciate that. So was that like a story that you grew up being told and stuff in your home region?
Yeah, no, but everybody here in my town knows this, but they don't know any details. You just, the Russians ravaged, looted Norrköping and burned it down, so what? But there's been a lot of interest in this here and in Stockholm, because it was not just this town that was ravaged and looted and burned. It was the whole coastline, except for Stockholm. Mark that, not Stockholm. Because they took whatever they got in the army way and placed it around Stockholm. So the Russian couldn't get to them.
Yeah.
But it left the rest of Sweden unarmed. So very, I can't describe this whole story, but if you read the storyline, it's very dramatic and very intense. People got burned and they got killed, and they lost their homes, and they were plundered into the bear skin by the Russians. No wonder we have a Rush hate here, like everybody else in the world.
Yeah, I was going to say that. You're probably not alone with that.
We're not alone, actually.
So for those who want to know, you can also purchase it on the Swedish book website called adlibris.com, Aldi Briz, and it's for 180 kronas, which is about $30 Australian. For those who are interested, and like I said, if you are interested in English translation, contact Lennart.
Yeah, we can print on demand. That's important to say.
Okay, yeah.
We don't have it printed yet, but if anyone would like a copy, we can do that.
Awesome. So, now, am I right in saying that you created the image with the Phantom drinking the milk?
If I created him like that,
Did you create that? There's like a Oh, there's like milk cartons and stuff where the Phantom.
No, not at all. No. That was from the beginning. I think Lee Falk did that.
Yeah, no. There was Sorry, I think I've got a pin of it somewhere.
Oh, you mean the milk cartoon?
Yeah. So it was an image. I'm not sure how well you're going to see that, but the Phantom's got
Okay.
his arms crossed and he's got a glass of milk.
Oh, I can't really say because that's an editorial thing, I guess. But we had a Fantomenland here in Sweden, a couple of miles from here, where I live.
Yeah.
It's gone but they had I had some T-shirt printed and postcards. I think you got a couple of those.
Yes, I got a couple.
You sent me some of those, which I have signed. But they had a Fantomenland with the cave, the Phantom, a person dressed like Phantom who walks around with kids and took them to adventures and such. It was pretty huge, actually.
Cool. So did you?
I'm
So
also gonna. What's that word you use? Pretty hooch. What's
Well, we had also they had a band singing Phantom songs, which were pretty. They wrote their own lyrics and created songs with that song. And they had a hit song with one. I can't remember which one it was, but it was pretty amazing actually to listen to the Phantom song. I have a copy of I don't know where it is, but from the lyrics to that song.
Oh, wow. I think I've got a CD or two from. I wonder if that's where it was. I forgot my train of thought now. Stephen, you got any questions while I try and?
I'm out. I can't think of anything else to. We've covered the Luaga separation arc and his time at Team Fantomen and what he's up to, what Lennart's up to now. I can't think of a. Yeah, you're enjoying? What are you up to if for fun now that you are retired and you're not you're not doing your Phantom stories and stuff? How do you relax? And by the looks of it, you relax by doing more work with the Hellwick comic or the Hellwick book.
Well, if you consider the Hellwick, it took me 4 years with all the research that I had to do. You can't avoid the fact that history has already happened. You can't change that. It's a crime to change the history.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
You can interact with the history with for instance, Phantom. I could place Phantom in this story if I would like to, but I need to fit it in so he cannot be shown. You cannot say that the Phantom doesn't exist. But in the King of Chicago, no one can say that he didn't exist because he was there as an employed gangster, and he failed to stop the massacre of the St. Valentine's Day. But no one knows that. No one can say he wasn't there. That's the truth. That's how you have to work when you deal with the historical events.
It's quite a skill that you obviously have, and other writers who have been able to just seamlessly weave the Phantom into these sort of stories, and you can believe that he was there. It's a fictional story, of course, but you can look with another eye and another point of view and think, yeah, that could have happened. That's not too far fetched.
Yeah, I don't know which comic book that is. I shall see. Anyway, Ulf Granberg, I should start from all over. There was an article in one of the nationwide spread newspapers that Professor Soames from England has discovered during his journey in West India, in India, the Bengali, that he found an item, a statue, a small statue.
I know this story.
Of a being that looked exactly like the Phantom. And he was serious. He looked like a gentleman from the British Empire. And he had his pipe, and he was very British in his look and appearance. And he was very serious. It might have turned out that the Phantom may have existed, actually. And it was so serious and so well documented, everything that he said. So the newspapers brought it up. It was nationwide spread, but it was all fake. There was Ulf Granberg who did all that. Well, this English professor, he was just a normal person. He found somewhere and dressed him up and took a picture and something.
I remember. And
That's gold.
I remember just and then they created a series on it. You know, what's her name? Minerva Brooks. So she kind of came out of that whole thing. It was the Phantom Man or Myth. Where was it?
Excuse me, you're talking to me? Or?
He tends to talk to himself a little bit while he's searching for something.
Okay, yeah.
But that Phantom Man or Myth story, that's Alex Saville drew that one. I remember that.
Yeah, and they had the story with that idol that you're talking about, and so they used that idol in other stories later on. That idol, that image that you've got, I remember the image. It was a black and white image of and then he's holding this little idol. It's probably about maybe 20, 30 centimeters high.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I'm just trying to. I can't.
I don't know if it was published in English, but it was certainly very highly ranked in Sweden. Here, it was a sensation. You know, it was full page. They're blown up in the full page.
See a nice spike in sales there.
Yeah, just to sell a magazine. Well, who knows? Maybe there was so. Maybe a Phantom has existed, but despite the fact that he exists in the new comic books.
Well, there's always been people throughout history who have gone unnamed and had big effects, I'm sure. And he's just characterising those people, the people that you don't hear about working behind the scenes. And
yeah, that's right. Who knows who lurks around the corner?
So
now, it's very interesting to have worked with Phantom for over 15 years, I must say.
So was there a reason why you stopped creating Fantomen stories?
Mostly because I ran out of ideas. I struggled with the, when your brain stopped functioning, it's not easy to come up with plots and ideas and such. And as a matter of fact, I had so many other jobs so I was divided, didn't know what to do. So it was a natural cause. It slowed down, and then I finally stopped. Yeah. Just because of that.
Well, your legacy will always remain strong, I guess, because you've created so many classic stories. One of the reasons why I'm addicted to the Phantom, and Stephen as well. Stephen's talked about his the Kindle,
the bundle.
Yeah, the bundle as well.
Yeah.
And you've been, two of your stories have been voted as the best stories in Higgins Revenge and the setup in 92 and 95. Then you've created stories, you've drawn stories, you've even drawn images and stuff like that as well for the Phantom, for Team Fantomen. So are you proud of what you've done with the Phantom?
Yes, I am, actually. I think I had contributed to many kids, a moment of kids' amusements, and enjoying and reading the stories I have made. Yes, I am proud.
Well, so you should be, because we've really enjoyed them.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know much about Australia, but I figure that the comic industry and the Phantom in particular is pretty big in Australia. Is that true? Or is it fading down there too?
It is dwindling a little bit, but that's comics in general. I would say it's very similar as like in Sweden, where the Phantom is, one of the main characters, and a lot of people grew up on the Phantom, and it's either led them to other characters or it was their first love, and I think that's very similar as the Phantom in Australia. A lot of people, they know who the Phantom is. It's in pop culture. It's in today. It's in our culture as it is in Sweden's and other people's around the world. But Fru's up to, what are they up to? 1,850 odd issues. So it's still going, and it's still going fairly strongly.
Well, it's good to hear.
Yeah, and they've branched out. They're not just doing the Phantom, but they're doing giant-sized Phantoms, and they've had a Kid Phantom series going for a while as well. So, I know I enjoyed it, and Jermaine did as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening Phantom-wise down under, which is always good to see and read.
Yeah. I guess you're around 35, 40, or what? You guys?
I turned 40 this year. 40.
And you, Jermaine?
How
old are you, dude? Not a trick question, mate.
Trick question. What I'm trying to say is, back here in Sweden, the older generations, in my age actually, they are very faithful subscribers and are more than willingly to discuss the Phantom with me when I go to the dentist, the opticians and such. So the younger generation here in Sweden as well, they don't care much for comic books. But the older generation is still faithful.
Yeah, it's probably fairly similar in Australia as well, where the younger generation are probably more reading other comic books, and I think that's because they're more readily available than, because when we were growing up, I'm 37 this year, so only a couple of years younger than Stephen. You go to the newsagent or you go to the comic to the shop, and it was either Archie Comics, the Phantom Comics, and Commando Comics. But now every city, every town's got a comic book shop, and you can get other heroes and stuff. So I think there's a lot more competition than what there was back in the 90s and before.
This digital revolution. Back in '95, I had this idea of creating a comic book, The Phantom, in a digital way. So I contacted a company who helped me to scan the magazine. This was '95. Remember this?
Yeah.
Where the technique was pretty primitive when it comes to deal with turning pages and animate and such. And was very successful. We scanned in a Phantom magazine. We managed to get the pages to open. You can read by clicking on the keyboard. And some of the frames we animated, for instance, Phantom riding on Hero throughout the jungle, an action scene, something like that. It would have been a hit. We would have been the first to do that if it weren't for King Features, who stopped it all.
Oh.
Remember this? Bose Press here in Stockholm, who is license giver for a Phantom here in Scandinavia and Europe, they struggled to get this, to help me get this through, but no way. They stopped it, and they never did anything with it. So I can't do anything because it wasn't my character, it wasn't my magazine or something like that. But it was a shame, actually. Think of what would happen if we were the first to do this. Read the magazine on screen. When the technique is so advanced today, imagine what you could have done this now.
Wow.
It was only just a couple of weeks ago when I was applauding King Features for finally getting their Sunday strip right when you're looking at it on their phone.
Yeah.
Wow. So did you ever have any stories edited or rejected through King Features or Bulls or Ulf Granberg or anything like that?
Well, not through King Features, no. I think I had one story rejected by Ulf Granberg, but I can't remember really who that was. But that was the one.
Okay. That was the one with the animation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was. It's called. Yeah, I remember now. It was called A Suitcase. It was all about a suitcase who was loaded with a bomb and VX gas, the most toxic gas you can imagine.
yeah.
Norge, that is. And it was a terror organization who brought this along to New York City, of course, Manhattan. But throughout different various circumstances, the terrorist who brought this suitcase along got killed in a car accident, and the suitcase was stolen. And then we could follow the suitcase from person to person. Eventually, before the Phantom was chasing this, without knowing that it was a suitcase with a bomb he was chasing, he thought it was drugs. That story didn't go well, for Granberg's eyes.
Oh, sounds exciting, though.
Yeah.
I made my own comic book with that story without the Phantom, with a detective called Michael Branahan, but it never be published.
Well, we might have to, if Mikkel Sol or Glenn Ford, the editors of Frew and Fantomenland, they're listening to that. There's a story that we can get published.
Yeah. It's all clear. It's all on my hard drive, ready to go.
So
you have retirement.
Yeah.
Retirement. So do you have all of your scripts and all of that still?
Pardon, I didn't hear.
Sorry, do you still have all of your story scripts on your hard drive?
Well, not in the early times I have on paper. Is storage somewhere here. I don't know where they are, but I got it on paper. But the latest years, I have everything on my hard drive.
Interesting. And what about your drawings? Did you keep the originals of that, or have they all disappeared?
Yeah, I got not the Phantom drawings because they belong to the company, publishing company. But my own drawings, my own adventures, my own plots. I have storage here. I'm cleaning up my storage facilities, and I found them, and I was thinking I was throwing them away, but I don't really like that idea. No, you're nodding.
No, not a good idea. I've just read Death from Radiation, and it was brilliant. The artwork was fantastic.
No, I don't know really what to do with them because they're original on plain sheets, paper.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe some nerd would like to.
We wouldn't know any of those, would we, Jan?
No, we wouldn't know any of those. If by any chance you find any of the original Phantom work, let me know. I'll be willing to take it. Stephen would as well, and I'm sure there's probably 50 to 100 other Phantom fans that are listening to this and putting up their hands and saying, "I'll be interested as well." So
that's good to know. I don't know whether the Egmont publishing company have the originals left when it comes to the paperwork. But I could always ask. But I think they have got rid of it. They have moved from Stockholm to Malmö, south of Sweden.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether they kept the originals. They have it on film or in hard drives and etc.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
You made mention that you've been doing some drawings for me. Do you have those handy so you can show the people that are watching this, and do you
want to get us jealous, do you, Jan?
What do you mean? I should draw something on spot?
No, I was just wondering. Do you? I was just basically, do you, if people want to contact you for drawing of the Phantom or to talk about the Phantom, can they do that with you?
Yeah, they can. I have done several things with the Phantom, with somebody who would like to be in the Phantom's place. His head, that is.
Okay.
I changed the Phantom's head to his, but the suit is all Phantom. And on his birthday or whatever. I managed to create, it was a Norwegian, I recall, many years ago. He was getting married, and he wanted to sit on a throne as Phantom. And his bride would be Diana in her suitable outfit. And when the Phantom asks, you say yes. That was his wedding present.
Classic. You can't say no to the Phantom, old Jungle.
No, you can't.
Awesome. And I believe you've got a website. What was the website again where people can look at some of your work and stuff?
Yeah, it's my signature, Ellem, and it's spelled ELLEM.
Yeah. Is it dot
.se.
Okay, so
That is a very primitive website. My son helped me with this once upon a time, but he's so lazy he doesn't update it. And now it doesn't really matter because I'm retired. But it would be nice to have a very slim website that's suitable. Maybe I'll do something about it sometime, but not now.
Fair enough. Stephen, do you have any questions that we've missed?
I don't think so. I think we're...
Well, I got something to you, because go ahead and read The King of Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah, I did before I came on here. I read.
Oh, you did that already?
Yeah,
okay.
I reread it. Yes.
Then read it again.
Yeah, I was running a little bit late, but because I was just finishing it up. Actually, that was something I noticed. The three stories I read before coming here, they're all quite long. Like we had, the King of the Chicago. The King of Chicago was a two-parter. The Simon and Rieger and Death from Radiation. Well, that's a two-parter. Then we've got you got the setup, you got Snake Cult. I'm just wondering, is that a theme that you had going? I suppose you had the overarching arc going through with the Luaga and the Phantom breaking up. Was it something that you always set it to do, to make two-parter, or was it just that as you got writing, crikey, this story's gotten bigger than I first imagined?
That's a weakness I have. The comic magazine does have very limited space, and you're required to do an adventure of, let's say, a maximum 28 pages or something like that, 32 at most. But as I get along and write, I write and write and write, and all of a sudden I managed to make 64 pages. And I have a hard time to convince Ulf Granberg, who's the head of Egmont company, to make a two-part story. So sometimes I get carried away and write, and then it turns out to be a two-part story. And I also think that a story, they have this ambition to have a very narrow story, compressed with a suitable ending on 28 pages, 32 at most. But I think it loses quality when I write if I compress the story to 28 or 32 pages. So from time to time, I get carried away and write, and I would not like to compress it back down to 28. It wouldn't be suitable. And The King of Chicago is a perfect example of that, because it was a very extended story that took place, and so many ingredients with Al Capone and his fight with Bugs Moran's and the bootleggings and everything. So it required a two-part story.
And you're right. Like, I'm reading. We'll stay on King of Chicago. I read the first part, and thought, oh, that was quick. And then I looked at the page count; it was actually quite up there. And so, like a lot of stories, say there were 28 or 32 pages, there'd be some filler pages or whatever, and you think really they could have cut that page off, and the story would be no worse off. If you cut a page out of I'm just going from the 3 stories I've read today. You cut a couple of pages off your story, you'd miss chunks of the story. Every page is important to the overall story.
Yeah, that's
There's
right.
no filler.
Yeah, that's right. And if you consider the fact that when you watch a series or something, you have the to be continued episode, and you have to wait for the next episode, and it's a thrill itself.
Yeah,
You expect something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of others. I'm just looking at your credits again. There's the Snake Cult, the Witches of Bedburg, the Bank Robbers, and the Setup as well. They were all 2-parters as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's quite
I think those stories benefited to be a part story because I have compressed it. It wouldn't be the same, in my view, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Now, just going back with something that you said before, you were talking about Fantomenland. Am I correct in saying that you created all of the images for Fantomenland?
Well, not all of them, because I have some T-shirts here as a reminder. We printed out a couple of T-shirts for sale throughout the company who had Fantomenland. I had postcards, I had posters, and I have a very large Phantom, full size, standing to invite people coming in and such.
Oh wow!
I did a lot of things there.
Do you have any of them easy access where you can show us? Because I haven't seen any of those.
It's very crowded in here, but I'll see if I can pick up the full size Phantom for you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Oh, both there.
Look at that. That's amazing.
Yeah, he's got to talk so he comes up on the big screen.
Yeah. So for those, if you're listening on the podcast, again, go jump on YouTube.
Oh.
This is it's bigger than me, actually, but it's not very hard. Everyone is bigger than me. But do you see the resemblance?
Yeah.
Well, we can't see your head. We can only see the torso, really.
If I turn it down a bit, do you see the head too?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So this is it's hand cut, handmade. So
Very
it
good.
showed us the real Phantom and the real size. Do you see it all, or do you see just the head?
Yeah, no, that's
We got
good.
most of him.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. So was that like a once-off, or did they make a few of those?
No, just one copy.
And did it come out as a poster or something for the general public?
Well, I had this as a poster. I was thinking about sending you a poster with the books, the images, the covers I made for you. So I can send you one. But I don't know. It doesn't. It's what do you call? Do you have the same size as we have? A3, A4.
Yeah.
It's an A3, which just means it's like this big. Do you have to roll it? You don't want to. I don't want to fold it because it.
Yeah. No.
I don't know. I can fix a tube or something like that to send it in.
Okay. And so is that where those postcards came with? Were they part of Fantomenland with the same images and that?
It's this figure, but he's standing in front of the cave. Maybe I have some too. Excuse me.
So again, if you're listening just on podcast, Lennart is just finding some images to show us again for the YouTube. So again, if you want to watch it on YouTube, you can just go to our website and the link for the YouTube will be in there as well.
I couldn't find it, but it's like this figure in front of a cave and a little bit of jungle and everything. You'll see when it finally reaches you.
No, so did you paint those, or did you paint those by hand, or and then scan it like that image? So was that done by painting, or how? Like what? I guess what's the word?
How'd you make it? What method?
Yeah, method.
Well, and those images, those covers, is painted by pastel crayons.
Oh wow!
This one is a digital product. I paint with my pencil on a tablet.
Yeah.
So is today's work, I would say. Everything goes digital today, and as I work together with the print shops and everything, and I found out why should I do an original when it's supposed to be scanned in and eventually go to the print press. I can skip that moment and do the digital product work from the beginning.
Yeah.
And deliver to the print shop itself without scanning an image. The loss is that you don't have an original. Sadly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate you showing us that stuff. Have you got any questions or anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about?
Oh, not really. I think I can tell you about minor details. No, not really.
Okay.
Not come to my mind just now.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for letting us into your world, giving us a little bit of background information on these stories that we all grew up on. So for myself, I'll let Stephen talk in a second. Thank you. Stephen, anything you wanted to say?
Once again, just reiterate what Jermaine said there, and thank you for creating such great stories which have stuck with us over 20 years. So yeah, we applaud you. Well, thank you very much.
I'm deeply honored, actually. Thank you for letting me know. I might add, during these 15 years I have worked with Phantom and Team Phantom and everything, we had a lot of laughs with our gatherings when we got together. So I enjoy it very much. And I appreciate when readers letting me know that they like my stories and letting me know that.
Again, if people wanted to get in touch with you or get the book and stuff like that, ELLEM.SE is your website. There's ways you can contact. There's also an English version of the website as well. So those in Australia or who do not speak Swedish can contact you that way. So on behalf of everyone at Chronicle Chamber, I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the fans as well. Thank you for your time and for your service to the hero that we all love.
Thank you, I would say.
How was that, Stephen? You enjoy that?
I did enjoy that. I enjoyed that a lot. It was great listening to Lennart and the story. And like you said before, the hearing the stories behind the stories. That's always a great part of these interviews that we do with the Phantom creators.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just, I guess for me, some of the things that I enjoyed was learning about the story behind how they came up with the Luaga and the Phantom. You know, how that meeting, how that came about. Yeah, that was just amazing, just getting that sneak peek of behind the curtain. And getting the story, yeah, like you said, the story behind the stories, it was just great. And it was interesting, like, I got hooked by the Phantom by one of his stories, and it was the same as with you as well. It was a real... It
was in the bundle that was given to me before just as I was beginning to buy them by myself.
Yeah, and it's amazing just to be able to talk to, I guess, the person who is responsible for our addiction. So, so yeah, no, that was awesome as well. Well, we hope our listeners enjoyed that as much as we did. Now, for those who have come in late, we're the Chronicle Chamber. You can find us on our website, which is chroniclechamber.com. You can email us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com, or you can find us on social media like Facebook, which is chroniclechamber.com if you search for us there. We're also on Twitter, which is @chronicletweets, and we're also on Instagram as well, which is @chroniclechamber. A lot of this is only made possible through our Patreons. Patreon is a website that allows people to subscribe and to be able to donate some of their money to us, which helps us pay the bills. So like website hosting and stuff like that. Now, this is episode 149. 150 at this stage is looking to be a bit of a special, which the Patreons will be a part of. So if you're looking for an excuse to join us on Patreon, this could be a good excuse. There's also going to be another couple of special things with Patreon as well, which we talked about in the last podcast, which was the comics and news, which is related to the Mikkel Leak Phantom board game. No, Phantom card game. There's no board involved with that one. Sorry. And then also another level with the Patreon. So basically, you can, if you support us with $5 or more a month, we give you access to our Phantom Preservation Project, which is like a depository or I guess let's call it a major treasure room. Let's keep it updated, of all Phantom stuff that has been from. We've got newspaper articles and stuff from the 40s to the 50s to current day, and it's all digitized, so that way basically it won't be lost for the future as well. So if you have come on board because you wanted to hear Lennart Moberg and you may have not subscribed to us, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, or if you're an Android user, you can find us on Podbean, Player FM, Castbox, Listen Notes, and also Spotify as well. Basically, if you subscribe to us on there, every single new podcast that comes, it will get dropped on your phone or device and stuff like that. So a huge thank you to Lennart Moberg for his time. For everyone who has listened to us, we hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. Dan, I hope you have gotten some sleep and stuff. And I was just joking about not letting you on because you're a Forkist. Stephen, thank you for joining us, mate. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. From myself, happy Fantoming, guys.
Happy Fantoming, everyone.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom,
The ghost who walks.
the Phantom,
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom